Discover how I uncovered the hidden truth that led to their 38M legal downfall at the gala. Sarah was juggling plates and coffee cups at the diner when the invitation to the annual charity gala slid under the door. The moment she touched that sleek cardstock, her heart raced. Glitz and glamour beckoned a world far removed from the grease-stained apron and the sounds of sizzling burgers. With her father battling cancer and 2 younger siblings to care for, a life like that felt like lost laughter, a childhood dream buried beneath responsibility. But that didn't stop the flicker of hope igniting in her chest. She could not only dream of a better life, she was determined to build it. Long shifts blurred together, but Sarah carried her burdens with resilience, putting on a smile for every regular who walked through the diner door. The flickering neon lights outside contrasted with her frantic determination as she refilled coffee cups, her heart speaking to each soul that entered. "We're in this together," she reminded herself, her family tucked safely away in her heart. The gala was a chance and opportunity to dress in red instead of the dull uniform and maybe catch a break. Amidst the laughter of elegantly dressed townsfolk, the old-fashioned chandeliers gleaming above, Sarah felt out of place yet wholly aware. Glimmering gowns moved like whispers around her. Everyone was so engrossed in their conversations that it seemed the air itself was shimmering with secrets. Yet behind those beaming smiles, hints of deception floated, hidden beneath the surface. She caught snatches of conversation, murmurs about the wealthiest family in town and their dubious practices, laughter edged with tension that piqued her curiosity. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Then she stumbled into an abandoned conference room, breath catching in her throat. Tucked in a dusty corner sat a file, thick with promises gone awry. As she flipped through those pages, her heart sank and her stomach twisted. Contracts detailing illegal practices, community exploitation. It felt like her pulse was thrumming louder than the gala's music. This potentially held the key to a 38 million legal downfall that had insidiously poisoned her community. But with knowledge came turmoil. As Sarah weighed her options, her childhood friend appeared, now a top player among the elite, a ghost of innocence. The familiar laugh felt like an assault, igniting memories of shared secrets in the backyard, now thinning like smoke. "You can't do this, Sarah," he said, urgency coating every syllable. "Family loyalty, our childhood, it's all at stake here." Tension charged the air as they faced off, her heart racing in a cacophony of loyalty and independence. Would exposing the truth deepen the divide between her and her past? Stack the burden on her already strained shoulders? As her lips parted to speak, the banquet hall swirled around her, and the crowd's intrigue turned into a collective breath, waiting for the truth to unravel. Would this revelation break her family or bind it tighter, forging a stronger unity among the townsfolk fighting for what was good and just? With the looming confrontation, Sarah stood on the cliff of discovery, wondering if the fight was worth the cost, or if her pursuit of justice would only fracture her world further. The moment stretched like a tight wire. Sarah's gaze locked on her friend's pleading eyes. The laughter and chatter of the gala faded into a muffled hum, as if the world had narrowed, leaving only them in sharp focus. With every racing heartbeat, the weight of the choices before her grew heavier. "Why are you defending them?" she finally managed to ask, voice steadier than she felt. She stepped closer, the musty smell of dust and forgotten memories swirling around them. "You know what they've done. We were raised to stand for what was right, to protect those who can't fight for themselves." "I know," he whispered, glancing over his shoulder as if fearing eavesdroppers. "But they're still my family, Sarah. They've changed, but so have we. You don't know what you might lose. Think about your dad, your siblings." His words almost wrapped around her, each one a thread of guilt weaving into her resolve. A knot twisted in her stomach at the mention of her family. The mom in her who put her siblings first struggled against the woman who could no longer ignore the pain caused by the people who sold out their community. She thought of her father, fighting cancer with every ounce of strength. She couldn't let his struggle be for nothing. "Maybe this is not just about loyalty," she said softly. her heart a mix of hope and fear. Maybe it's about honesty. If we don't fight back, what would that say about us? About what kind of future we're leaving for our kids? He opened his mouth, then closed it, the defeat washing over his features like a wave. She could see the battle, the conflict between preserving their past and fighting for justice. Before he could respond, a voice broke through the silence. A man in a crisp suit entered the room, his sharp gaze drifting from Sarah to her friend. "What's going on in here?" he inquired, feigning nonchalance, yet Sarah recognized the underlying threat of authority in his demeanor. "Nothing," her friend quickly replied, and Sarah felt the air shift. The unspoken warning hung thick. She could lose her friend and perhaps even be further punished in ways she couldn't yet understand. "Come on, let us get back to the party," the man suggested. Sarah's heart raced. She couldn't allow herself to be shuffled back into the glittering crowd without taking action. "Wait," she called, her voice stronger. "I have something to say." In that moment, the room seemed to expand, her small frame standing defiantly against the tides of wealth and power. "I know about the contracts, about what you've done," she continued, her heart pounding in her chest. "This isn't going away. You can't buy silence anymore." Her friend flinched, disbelief plastered across his face as the truth of her words hung in the air. The man's expression morphed into one of annoyance, but behind it, she saw a flicker of fear of exposure. The crowd outside began to notice, glancing curiously toward their secluded corner. She knew she was teetering on the edge of something monumental, the kind of moment that could rewrite her life, and that of her whole community. "What will it be?" she asked, looking between them, her breath caught in her throat. "Will you turn your back on what's right? Or will you stand with me?" Her friend hesitated, the weight of her words pulling him in every direction. As the seconds ticked by, the silence grew deafening, teetering on the brink of revelation. With everything around her fading, Sarah wondered, would she unify or fracture her world in this moment? Would the truth set her free, or bring devastating consequences? And as she waited for an answer, the future hung in the balance. One small choice stood between them, and she held her breath for it to unfold. The weight of the moment pressed down on Sarah as her friend's eyes darted between her and the man in the suit. She could see the conflict there, the desire to protect his own, clashing with the knowledge of the wrongs that needed to be righted. "Please," she begged, "don't be afraid to choose the right side. We can make a difference." The man shifted his weight, adjusting his stance. "This isn't a game, Sarah. You're playing with fire now." His voice dropped, laced with an intensity that sent a chill down her spine. "You think you're brave? You have no idea what you're asking for." But her resolve only hardened. "I've seen what you've done. You can't keep pretending this is fine." A few partygoers glanced over, curiosity prickling at the edges of her nerves. The laughter outside became a distant echo, but Sarah was done with silence. She took a breath, letting the air fill her lungs, and with it came a rush of determination. "Tell them the truth," she cried out, her voice ringing louder than she had intended. "Let them know the truth about how your family has turned its back on our community. You can stand by them and live with the lies, or you can choose to fight, choose to finally stand for something." Her friend's expression was lost, torn between loyalty and the reality of their shared history. Sarah took another step forward, closing the distance. "This isn't just about us. It's about everyone who can't speak up. Think about those who have lost so much." The moment hung in the air, full of tension and possibility. Her friend opened his mouth, but before he could speak, the man in the suit interrupted, his tone cold and commanding. "Enough. This isn't how we do things." With a quick motion, he stepped closer, and Sarah felt a wave of anxiety wash over her. She wasn't going to back down, not now. Feeling as though she was balancing on a tightrope, she squared her shoulders, steeling herself. "Then how do you do it? By burying the truth? By hiding behind contracts and wealth?" The man's eyes narrowed. "You need to consider the repercussions of your actions. And you need to consider how what you've done affects lives," she snapped back, fire in her voice. "If this is going to change anything, we have to speak out." Her heart raced as her friend's expression flickered. Would he stand with her? She saw a flash of understanding, a brief glimmer of hope. But just as quickly, doubt shadowed his face. What if it goes wrong? What if they retaliate? This isn't just about today. It's about tomorrow. about building a future free from their tyranny. Sarah took a deep breath, searching his gaze for the connection they once shared. I just can't make this choice, he murmured, pain etched across his features. You don't know what they're capable of. Maybe not, she admitted, her voice softer now. But I know who I am. And I won't be silenced any longer. Silence enveloped them again, thick enough to slice through. The crowd had gone back to their revelry, unaware of the storm brewing in this hidden corner. But in her heart, Sarah felt the stirring of something greater, a call to push back, to reclaim not just her future, but her family's legacy. But would they join her? Or would her voice fade back into the shadows of this grand affair? Just as uncertainty threatened to choke her, the man in the suit spoke again. If you're going to do this, you better be prepared for the fallout. Sarah locked eyes with her friend, needing one last spark of courage. What will it be? Are you with me? Or are you going to let fear keep us in chains? As the festivity continued outside, she stood poised at the edge of a precipice, teetering between vulnerability and empowerment. Would she leap into the unknown or step back into the quiet of complacency? And as she awaited his answer, she couldn't help but wonder if they were to take this step together. Would they find strength in numbers, or would they face the consequences alone? Her friend stared at Sarah, the weight of the decision visible in the lines of worry etched onto his face. A faint flicker of conflict danced in his eyes, caught between the easy path of silence and the daunting road of action. The laughter and music from the party felt like a world away, a hollow echo filling the gaps of truth not being spoken. Sarah, what if we end up worse off? He whispered, glancing nervously at the man in the suit. Worse off? Sarah pressed, her voice rising again, more passionate than ever. Do you really think it could be any worse than living with this guilt? She gestured vaguely around the room. Look at this place. All of this wealth built on the back of families like ours. His face fell. There was a pain in his expression that twisted like a knife in her gut. She reached out, placing a trembling hand on his arm. We need to stand up for them. For us. Together we can be the voice that shuts these lies down. For a fleeting moment the world around them faded, and it was just the two of them. Memories of laughter shared, adventures ventured, and heartaches born flooded Sarah's mind. She needed that connection now more than ever. But would he reach back? I don't want to lose you to this, he finally confessed, the words heavy like stones thrown into water. You won't lose me. But staying silent? That's what will truly cost us, she said, squeezing his arm for emphasis. The man in the suit leaned closer, his eyes narrowed, oozing a calculated menace. Choose wisely. There are consequences for stirring the pot. As Sarah continued to hold his gaze, a fire surged within her. She didn't want to waver. To let this moment slip away, her voice felt like a beacon calling for change. And what about the consequences for those who remain silent? For all those lives impacted by your family's greed? Do we just forget and move on? What kind of future would that lead to? The tension in the air thickened, tangible and electric. Her heart thundered, words tumbling out before she could stop them. You have the power to create change. Don't let fear snuff out that spark. He closed his eyes for a moment as if seeking clarity. The group surrounding them, caught up in their celebration, remained oblivious to their whispers. Finally his eyes flickered open, a mix of resignation and courage sparking within him. Okay, I won't back down. Let us do it together. A wave of relief washed over Sarah, merging with a bubbling sense of excitement. She felt strength radiate from their connection. But before they could celebrate this moment of unification, the man in the suit raised an eyebrow, his mouth tightening into a thin line. Do you know what you are getting into? He asked, his voice like gravel. This isn't just a game, this is war. Sarah took a deep breath, grounding herself. Then let us get started. But as they prepared to step into the fray, a sudden realization struck her. The stakes were far higher than she'd anticipated. This wasn't just about revealing truth, it was about their lives, their safety. What if doubts clouded her mind? The clarity they'd reached flickering like a candle. What if this leads to something we can't handle? What if the backlash comes after us personally? They were at a crossroads. And as Sarah searched her friend's face for an answer, the realization hit hard. This was the moment everything changed. Power hung in the balance, but so did everything they held dear. Would courage carry them through this storm? Or would fear forge barricades they couldn't break through? All Sarah knew was that they just ignited the fuse, and now they had to brace for the explosion. Their breaths mingled in the charged atmosphere, a shared heartbeat echoing louder than the distant party. Sarah blinked away her doubt, focusing on her friend, whose expression was still a storm of uncertainty. "We need a plan," she said, a sudden steadiness filling her voice. "We can't just charge in blindly." His eyes hardened, resolve surfacing through the fear. "What do you have in mind?" "Look," she said, leaning closer as if sharing a secret, "we need to gather everything we can. Evidence, testimonies, anything that shows how twisted this whole thing is. We have friends who've been affected, we can talk to them. But we have to move fast." He nodded slowly, the gears of his mind spinning. "I know a few people who might be willing to help. They won't let fear keep them silent." It felt like a faint light breaking through the clouds. "Exactly." Sarah's heart raced, a thrilling yet terrifying surge. "Let's South meet at my place tomorrow. No distractions." The man in the suit, still lurking nearby, shifted slightly, his ears training to catch their conversation. The pressure of his watchful gaze weighed heavy on Sarah's soul, but she pressed on. "The longer we wait, the worse it gets for everyone. We can't allow them to keep pulling the strings." "Okay, we'll do it," her friend said, determination spilling over. "That man," he glanced toward the suited figure, a sense of danger flickering in his eyes. "He's not going to let us walk away from this unscathed." Sarah felt the intensity of his words sink deep within her. The thrill of rebellion surged, akin to a wildfire, but anxiety swirled in her stomach. What had they unleashed? Let him try. She forced a smile, bolstered by their united front. It felt good, just a moment's reprieve from doubt. As they stepped away from their private corner, the sights and sounds of the gala slowly came back into focus: the elaborate decor, clinking glasses, and laughter that seemed mockingly distant. They had a purpose now, but it came with risks. Everyone looked beautiful in their designer outfits, dancing and toasting to another night of their lavish lives. Yet, it felt like another world apart from the truth they were about to expose. "We just need to make sure we don't get swept up in everything," he cautioned, scanning the room. "But when the time comes, we need to be loud," Sarah replied fiercely. She wanted the world to hear them. She wanted change. Without warning, a hand clapped her shoulder. Startled, she turned to find the man in the suit grinning, though his eyes were anything but friendly. "I hope you're enjoying the festivities. Never forget, it's a small world. You don't want to make enemies." Sarah's stomach nodded, but she stood her ground. "Then perhaps we should start being honest with one another," she shot back. "Careful now," he said, his voice low, almost soothing. "Too much honesty can be dangerous." As he walked away, an ominous silence fell over them. "What was that about?" her friend whispered, concern etching deeper lines into his brow. "I don't know, but he knows we're serious." The gravity of their situation settled heavily between them, but Sarah spotted the subtle flicker of defiance in his eyes. "We have to push through this," she declared, knowing fully well the repercussions loomed ahead. With heavy hearts but steadfast spirits, they made their way towards the exit. The world felt different now, more pressing. Sarah knew that with each step forward, they were leaving behind a life they once knew, a life they could no longer accept. "Tomorrow then, we gather our strength?" he asked, glancing back one last time towards the party, hesitant to leave. Tomorrow. She felt ignited and terrified all at once, but it was time to unravel the threads. As they stepped outside into the cool night air, Sarah held her breath. The night was alive, electric, and waiting. But in that moment of hope, the question hung heavy. Were they prepared for what lay ahead? And as they began to walk, a nagging notion crept into her mind: what if the threat they faced was more than just one man in a suit? The chill of the night air prickled at Sarah's skin as she and her friend walked away from the party, leaving behind a world sparkling with laughter and lies. Each step felt heavier, the contrast between what they had just witnessed and the dark path they were about to tread nearly unbearable. "Do you think we can really do this?" her friend asked, his voice barely above a whisper. He shoved his hands deep into his pockets, as if searching for warmth and reassurance at the same time. "We don't have a choice," Sarah replied, her heart racing. She was scared, but determination surged within her like an unyielding tide. "We owe it to everyone who has been hurt. No more silence." He glanced back at the illuminated mansion, the music still throbbing through the night. It feels like we're stepping into a lioness den. And not just one lion. Sarah wrapped her arms around herself, letting the air still her swirling thoughts. Maybe we are, she admitted. But sometimes you have to roar to be heard. We just have to be smart about it. They crossed the threshold of her home, darkness spilling across her empty living room. For a moment, a sense of safety enveloped them, cocooning them against the swirling chaos of their plans. But the weight of the fight ahead loomed over them like an impending storm. Let us make a list, Sarah suggested, finding her phone and flipping on a small lamp. As the light flickered on, illuminating cramped walls adorned with posters for long-gone concerts and pictures of carefree memories, it felt oddly grounding amidst the uncertainty. Her friend pulled out a pen and a notepad she had tossed onto the coffee table. Okay, start with the basics, he said, exhaling deeply. Who do we talk to first? The others who've been affected? Absolutely. Sarah began to list names and potential contacts. There's Julie and Miguel. They have first-hand stories. We can start there. She studied his expression. What about you? Who else do you know? As they flipped pages, scribbling down potential allies, the inner strength of their purpose began to drown out the fear. This wasn't just about them. It was about speaking for those who felt voiceless. Hours slipped by, yet they barely noticed. The atmosphere shifted, charged with hope and determination. Then her phone buzzed a message notification from an unknown number. Her heart pounded as she picked it up. The words scrolled across the screen. You're playing a dangerous game. Step back before it's too late. A chill crept across her skin. Who is it? Her friend's voice sharpened, eyes widening as he leaned in closer. I don't know, Sarah admitted, the edge of panic creeping into her voice. But they know. They're watching us. What if? A rush of apprehension threatened to swallow her whole. Don't let it distract you, Sarah. We have to keep reminding ourselves why we're doing this, he said, his steady gaze meeting hers, anchoring her spiraling thoughts. Fear is powerful, but we can be stronger. Sarah nodded, forcing a deep breath to steady her racing heart. She felt the pulse of possibility again. Right. We keep going. We gather what we need and shine a light into the darkness. As they resumed their planning, scribbling down every detail and possible scenario, time felt both limitless and fleeting. The weight of their mission grew heavier, yet a flicker of defiance ignited between them, one that could burn brightly against the shadows of deceit. Yet even amidst their preparation, another question loomed large. What if the people they trusted to stand with them didn't show? Could they truly take on something that felt bigger than themselves? And if they failed, what repercussions awaited them? That night, as the clock ticked towards dawn, Sarah knew the stakes had never been higher. They were already deep in the fray, but just how far were they willing to go to expose the truth? Sarah's fingers stilled over the notepad, the names blurring before her eyes. The room felt stifling, the air thick with tension. What if they know we're coming? She whispered, almost afraid to voice the thought. Her friend leaned back against the couch, frustration flickering across his face. We can't live in fear. If we do, we're already defeated, he replied firmly. We need to be decisive and fast. We can't let this hang over our heads any longer. The morning light crept through the thin curtains, throwing bands of illumination across the room. Sarah's eyes caught the dust floating in the air, tiny vessels of hope against the gloom closing in around them. You're right, she finally agreed, her voice gaining strength. We'll set up meetings today. The sooner we get this ball rolling, the better. They split their tasks, filling the day with phone calls and messages, each connection a thread in the fabric of their plan. Sarah called Julie first. The conversation was fast and urgent, adrenaline fueling her words. Julie was hesitant, hanging back, but ultimately agreed to meet. There was a crack in her resolve that Sarah could sense, a shared fear. Next is Miguel, her friend said as he furiously scribbled notes. He'll bring his anger with him. It might help. They discussed their strategy, deciding to meet at a small cafe on the outskirts of town, a less conspicuous place where people wouldn't expect the gathering. It was a risk but a necessary one as they moved through the day. Sarah noticed the little things, the way her friend's jaw clenched with every negative response they met, the way her hands shook when flipping through the contacts on her phone. Everything felt heightened and raw. They were diving into unknown waters, each wave threatening to pull them under. When the time finally came to meet, the nerves hit hard. They arrived early, their hearts pounding in synchrony. Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they were entering a battlefield, not just a cafe. What if they refuse? She asked, her voice barely a breath. If they don't believe us now, they'll never believe us, her friend said, determination etched into his features. Just remember why we're fighting. We're not alone in this. As Julie and Miguel arrived, the atmosphere in the cafe crackled with anticipation. Sarah felt a warmth of solidarity rush through her. They all sat, for chairs gathered around a small table like a shield against the outside world. The conversation began tentatively, each of them inching forward, sharing their experiences, their fears. With every story shared, Sarah felt the weight of their collective pain beginning to surface. They were peeling back layers of hurt, each revelation fueling the fire inside her. Then Julian spoke up. What if we're wrong? What if this costs us? His voice trembled with doubt, but the fire in his eyes told a different story, a longing for justice. Sarah met his gaze, heart racing. What if we're right? She countered softly. What if the truth can change everything? They nodded, uncertainty slowly giving way to commitment. With hands clasped across the table, they felt the spark of something greater. Their mission was no longer just an idea. It was alive. But as they laid out the groundwork, plans and timelines taking shape, Sarah's phone buzzed again. The message was sharp, cutting through the hope. You're not alone, but you're in over your heads. Stop now. The group fell silent, the weight of the unknown creeping back into the room. Sarah felt her breath catch, dread sinking into her stomach. Do you think they're going to? I don't know. Her friend looked grim. But we have come too far to turn back now. The echo of doubt loomed large. But Sarah felt the stirrings of something more profound, a simmering strength. What if this was just the beginning? As they focused on their plans, a thought struck Sarah, unwelcoming yet persistent. What if the very people they sought to expose were closer than they imagined? They had lit a fuse, but how long before the explosion came? And would they be ready for it? The clatter of dishes and soft murmurs filled the cafe, creating a strange juxtaposition to the tension at their table. Sarah's gaze drifted from one face to another. Julie, who was nervously tracing patterns in the wood of the table. Miguel, whose jaw was set tight, brows furrowing with each passing second. And Julian, his expression a tempest of hope and doubt. Did you see that? Miguel suddenly broke the silence, his eyes narrowing as he looked towards the entrance. A couple had just walked in, but the energy shifted. There was something off about them, too glitzy, too keen. They lingered near the entrance, scanning the cafe as if searching for someone. Sarah's stomach dropped. Focus, her friend urged, breaking her attention. We've got to stick to the plan. We can't let fear dictate our actions now. With a nod, Sarah pushed the unease aside. They had to stay the course for the sake of their mission. Okay, let us recap, she said. We need to gather evidence, reach out to others who have been affected. Trust is key. But how do we ensure our safety? Julie drew a shaky breath. I might know someone who can help with that. Someone who has dealt with this kind of exposure before. They know the risks, she said, her body leaning into the conversation, igniting a spark of interest in the others. Why didn't you mention this earlier? Julian asked, his voice laced with urgency. We need every resource we can find. Before she could respond, a loud burst of laughter erupted from the newly arrived couple. They meandered closer, stealing glances that felt invasive. It was unsettling. Sarah locked eyes with her friend, wordlessly confirming the growing tension that hung heavy in the air. Let us shift the focus, Sarah suggested. What do we do if they find out what we're planning? We need a backup plan. First, we have to be sure that there are multiple sources who can corroborate our story, Miguel replied, his tone firm. Spreading our findings through as many veins as possible will help. Right, and I think we should set up anonymous channels of communication, Sarah added, her pulse quickening as she scribbled notes on the notepad. If anyone gets cold feet, we can still reach out without revealing our identities. Feeling a little emboldened, Julie leaned in closer, shifting her voice to a whisper. We should also reach out to the media. If we can get someone in who believes our story, we have a better chance of getting the truth out there no matter what comes our way. Suddenly, the couple from the entrance was at their side, interrupting their brainstorming session. The woman, perfectly coiffed in a designer outfit, flashed a toothy grin and introduced herself. We couldn't help but overhear you talking about a situation? We'd love to know more. The group exchanged nervous glances. Sarah's heart raced as she could feel the eyes of the couple lingering longer than comfort would allow. The air felt suffocating. It's just a personal discussion, Sarah said, trying to maintain composure. Nothing of consequence. Oh, but you'd be surprised what's of consequence in this world. The man chimed in, a glint of interest in his eyes that seemed to mask something darker. Before Sarah could respond, her phone vibrated again, this time with a shadowy warning. You're being watched. They know. The words electrified her spine. Fear clawed its way back into the pit of her stomach, but she couldn't show it. We have to go, she urged, standing abruptly. The room shifted in her vision as her mind raced. They gathered their things, but not without the glitzy couple trailing closely behind them, a hunter-esque persistence in their stride as they exited into the bustling street. The weight of their collective burden pressed heavily on their shoulders. They had only just begun, but the stakes felt perilously high. What have we unleashed? Sarah thought, her breath coming in short gasps as they turned a corner, the cafe fading from view. But the feeling of being pursued clamored in her ears. They needed answers and fast. What if those closest to their mission were not just allies but also adversaries? The cold wind whipped through the alley, toying with Sarah's hair as she pressed against the damp brick wall. With quick breaths, she glanced over her shoulder, scanning for the glitzy couple. Every bone in her body screamed to run, but something heavier held her in place. We need to regroup and figure this out, Julian whispered fiercely. He was fidgeting, tugging at the collar of his jacket as if it might somehow shield him from the looming danger. His eyes darted around, alert but filled with the kind of uncertainty that could tip panic into chaos. Yes, we need a safe spot, Sarah said, her voice lower now but tinged with urgency. Julie, is there a place nearby? Julie nodded, her cheeks flushed. Just a few blocks from here, there's a friend's apartment. It's secluded and they let us in. We can go there and figure out our next move. Then let us hurry, Miguel said, his voice steady. However, a trace of fear lingered in his eyes, betraying his bravado. They pushed off the wall, moving quickly, ducking into the throngs of bustling pedestrians, blending in for cover. But Sarah could still feel those piercing glances from the couple like needles pricking at her spine. They made their way down the crowded street, tension tightening like a noose. The city's noise faded into an echo as adrenaline surged through her veins. With every step, she replayed their conversation back at the cafe, searching for clues, begging for clarity. Those two had been too interested, too tuned in. What did they want? At least we have a plan, Julie murmured, lips pursed tightly. We just need to stay focused. Right, Sarah replied, gulping in a breath. And stick together. If they're watching us like that, we have to be smart. When they reached the building, Julie quickly punched in the code, the door swinging open to reveal a cozy appearance that paradoxically felt both comforting and risky. They slipped inside, chased by the looming shadows of uncertainty. The space smelled faintly of coffee and old books, a momentary oasis from the chaos outside. As they settled onto mismatched couches, Sarah grasped the notepad, its pages filled with frantic notes and circles every bit of information they gathered, every person they needed to reach. But fear lapped at the back of her mind, tainting her clarity. What if we're being played? Miguel's voice cracked like thunder, slicing through the worry-laden air. What if that couple knows more than they let on? Then we'll figure it out, Sarah insisted, though doubt gnawed at her. She had envisioned their mission as one of clarity and righteousness, but now it felt tangled in a web of deception. Let us talk to your contact, Julian suggested, determination dawning in his eyes. Maybe they have some answers that can help us sift through this mess. With a heavy heart, Julie nodded, pulling out her phone. As her fingers hovered above the screen, Sarah felt the weight of the moment. This wasn't just about uncovering corruption anymore. This was about survival. Can you trust them? Sarah asked, a heaviness settling into her chest. Yes, Julie said, though her voice wavered slightly. I've known them for years. They will understand. But trust was a fragile thing. What if this contact led to more danger? What if the person Julie was calling was entangled in the same game as the couple? Just then, a soft knock echoed through the apartment. Time seemed to freeze. They looked at each other, eyes wide. Did anyone know we'd be here? Sarah whispered. Suddenly the door creaked open. Was this ally or enemy? What awaited them on the other side could change everything they thought they knew about their fight. As the door swung open, Sarah held her breath, caught between dread and anticipation. The figure in the doorway was a tall, familiar silhouette, a woman with bright red hair, and a fierce determination etched in her features. It was Emma, Julie's friend, but the sudden weight of her presence felt both like a lifeline and a warning. "Guys!" Emma exclaimed, her eyes darting from one anxious face to the next. "I came as soon as I heard. I wanted to make sure you were all right." Relief flooded the room as they rushed to embrace her. Emma quickly ushered them inside, locking the door behind her. "Okay, we need to act fast," she began without preamble, urgency radiating from her. "I've heard some things, whispers about the couple you encountered. They're tied to some powerful people, but they're not invincible. We can turn the tides." Adrenaline surged in Sarah's veins. "What do you know?" Emma glanced over at the window, ensuring the curtains were drawn tightly, then lowered her voice. "They're spies, hired by the family at the helm of the illegal practices. Their whole job is to nip threats in the bud. If they're looking at you, you're onto something. We need to expose that entire network." The air buzzed with possibilities as the heaviness of doubt began to lift. "Then we have to make our move," Sarah declared, looking at her friends. "We have the evidence, we have the testimonies, we just need to connect the dots. If we can put it all together and get it in front of the right people, we can bring them down." Julian spoke up, energized by the plan. "We can't just present the evidence, we need to show the impact. We share the stories of those affected, real, vivid accounts. That's what will make them listen." Sarah's resolve hardened. "Exactly. We gather everyone, make it personal. We need to build an even bigger movement. This can't just be us fighting this fight. It has to be about the people we're standing for." She sensed their collective excitement crackle like electricity. They were ready to transform their fear into strength. But then, as she felt the weight of her decision surrounding her like a warm embrace, unease skittered across her thoughts again. What if all their hard work was for nothing? What if they faced retribution that was more than they could handle? "You are strong, but they are powerful," Emma warned, her gaze stern. "This won't just be an uphill battle. It might feel like an avalanche coming down on top of you." Yet the fire of defiance burned brighter in Sarah's core. "Then let the avalanche come. We've already made our choice. We can't go back now." One by one they nodded, their quiet courage transforming into collective defiance. Plans unfurled as they crafted a timeline, identifying key individuals in the community who could help amplify their voices. With each connection made, they could feel the strength of solidarity weaving back together the fabric of their shared future. Hours slipped away as they brainstormed scenarios, each idea shifting them closer to their goal. But in the fading light, that nagging sense of danger clawed at Sarah's insides. Finally, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Sarah gathered her friends. "All right, it's going to get tougher. We can expect backlash. There's always a price for standing up," she said, her heart racing. "But we have to know that we are more than our fear. I refuse to let it dictate our choices. And we're together in this," Miguel insisted, determination blossoming within him. As the air thickened with their shared commitment, a sudden realization struck Sarah like a lightning bolt. "What if we get this all on tape? Record the testimony. That way we have evidence, proof of what we're fighting against." "That's it." Julian's eyes widened. "We can have everyone share their stories on video. Let the world see the truth, the pain, no one can deny it then." "Yes." Sarah felt the atmosphere shift, transforming from uncertainty to unstoppable resolve, and in that moment, they breathed as one. They were now warriors, standing shoulder to shoulder against the looming threat of the couple, the looming weight of the family they were ready to expose. As they prepared to reach out to the rest of the community, Sarah felt a surge of hope swell in her heart. They were terrified, yes, but together they were unyielding. Days turned into a relentless blur of strategy and action. With each shared story, the threads of their collective voices grew unbreakable, rallying support from neighbors who had also felt the suffocating pressure of the wealthy family's grip. The movement blossomed, gathering speed like a runaway freight train fueled by shared resolve. On the final day, as they sat in a small, dimly lit basement, ready to reveal everything to a group of anxious town residents, Sarah felt the weight of anticipation settle heavily on her chest. The whispers of doubt were silenced as she stepped forward, her heart resonating louder than her fears. By standing together we hold the strength to change the tide, she began, her voice steady, echoing through the room. We can spark a light in the darkness, but we are stronger when we are united. Gasps filled the room as the community began to grasp the enormity of what had transpired. Gasps turned into murmurs, hope glimmering in wary eyes with each testimony shared. The truth unfurled and rippled outward, a movement sparked by one courageous choice that might forever alter the course of their town. And as the echo of shared stories filled the air, Sarah knew one thing with certainty. They were no longer alone in this fight. The truth needed to be spoken, and together, they were a fire ready to illuminate every corner, taking down the shadows that had long held sway. In that moment, it became clear. Courage was not the absence of fear, but the commitment to act regardless of it. With hearts united, they were ready to face whatever storms lay ahead. But as they stood there, a fresh surge of collective power rising within them, an unsettling realization settled in Sarah's gut. This fight was just beginning. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, it really makes a difference. Comment your reactions and feelings about the ending. And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Don't wait not even one more second to share. This is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe now.